Hello and welcome back to Kim Reads. We're going to start the next Kaya story. Kaya Shows the Way. Chapter 1, The Sound of the Falls. Long before Kaya could see the waterfalls on the river ahead, she began to hear their voices. She and her family were riding over hot, dry plains, so the murmur of running water was a sweet promise. But as they rode closer to the river, that murmur grew into a powerful song, like many men drumming. When the riders crested the last hill and looked down at the shiny river, Kaya saw the falls plunging over black cliffs. Even at this distance, the falls roared like thunder. The earth seemed to tremble. Kaya's little brother, Wingfeather, was seated behind Kaya on the chestnut horse. He held her tightly around the wrist. "Is that a monster roaring?" he asked in a small voice. Kaya patted his leg. "That's the sound of the falls you hear," she said. "Remember when we stayed there last summer? Remember how you and Sparrow played all day with your cousins and there were games and races every night? Remember how many salmon gave themselves to all the fishermen?" Wingfeather only hugged her more tightly, one hand tucked into his baby moccasin. Kaya knew he was going to be strong, but the roar of Celio Falls frightened many children. "The water sounds angry," Sparrow said. He was right behind Kaya's older sister, Brown Deer. "But the river's our friend, and soon you'll get used to its roar," Brown Deer said. Her voice was calm, but her cheeks were flushed with excitement. Kaya knew her sister was eager to meet the family and friends here at the falls. Brown Deer would also meet Cutcheat again, whom she hoped to marry. Kaya's father, who rode ahead, signaled for everyone to halt before beginning the steep descent from the bluffs in the valley. He and other men and women dismounted and began checking the heavy packs to make sure they were tied tightly and wouldn't slip and injure a horse or rider. Kaya dismounted and gazed down at the vast river valley. Stony islands clustered in the river, white water sweeping around them. Kaya saw large horse herds grazing on the flat land. Many fishing platforms slashed together had been built over the water. Hundreds of teepees and lodges lined both shores as far as upstream and downstream as she could see. The villages were those of many different people. Some who had lived on the river all year, and others who had visited from the plains, mountains, and the ocean to fish and trade. Kaya's band and many other bands of Nimipu were joining together for the yearly return of salmon up the big river. Kaya shaded her eyes and peered at the mist that rose like thick smoke down the waterfalls. She saw bright red rainbows arching low over the falls, and her heart lifted. Rainbows were good signs. She hoped to meet up with their friend Two Hawks here at the falls. He said that when they met again, he might have good news of Kaya's sister, Speaking Rain. When she and Two Hawks had escaped from their enemies, they had hoped to leave Speaking Rain behind. But Kaya knew that Two Hawks might be bringing bad news instead. He might have learned that Speaking Rain had been abandoned by their captors, or injured or lost. For how could a blind girl get along without someone to care for her? As if Tatlo sentenced Kaya's troubled thoughts, the pup bounded up to her, his pink tongue hanging out. He was growing fast, and his legs were getting long. Kaya bent and put her sister's face against his soft ear. "You'll help me find my sister, won't you?" she whispered to him. He licked her hand, his tail wagging in circles, as if he were saying, "I'll try." Kaya's grandmother climbed off her horse and began adjusting the travois on a pack horse. When Cayusta saw the twins' worried frowns, her lined face softened. The falls are hissing and raging, boys," she said, "but that's because they're so steep and wide. Don't you remember how Coyote made them for us?" She turned to Kaya. "Would you comfort your brothers with that story while I fix the travois?" Kaya said quickly. Each day she reminded herself to do her very best. She wanted to be trustworthy, like her friend Swan circling. The the woman who'd given Kaya her name to use when she was older. When Wingfeather and Sparrow slid off the horses. "Tell me about Coyote," Sparrow begged her. "Tell me about his tricks," Wingfeather added. Everyone loved his stories about Coyote, who was always playing tricks and teaching lessons at the same time. Kaya sat with the twins on the travois, and Tatlo, panting, laying down in the river at their feet. "One day Coyote was coming up the river," she began. "In those days long ago, the river was calm because the river people had dammed it up. They wanted to keep all the salmon for themselves. Coyote was hot and tired, like we are, and he decided to swim in the cool water. He swam around until he saw 5 beautiful girls on the shore. He saw a chance to play a trick on the river people, so he turned himself into a baby and came floating over the river and came floating over the water toward the girls." "I remember what Coyote did then," Wingfeather cried. "He bawled like a baby, wah, 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 to get the girls' attention." "Uh-huh," Kaya said. "He cried, and the girls quickly swam and pulled him from the water." "What a precious baby," they said, but the youngest sister wasn't fooled. "Watch out," she said. "That's no baby, that's Coyote." The baby put out his lower lip as he was about to cry again. "Don't tease him," the other girls said. "Let him take him home with us." The girls fed the baby and took care of him, and he grew fast. One day he spilled a cup of water. "Get me more water," he demanded. The youngest sister, who still didn't trust the baby, said, "Let him get in the water himself." So the baby began to crawl toward the water. When he was out of sight, he jumped up and ran. "He certainly moves fast," one of the girls said. The youngest sister said, "That's because he's Coyote." "I know what happened next," Sparrow cried. "Coyote broke the fish dam and the river people had made. Coyote swam up to their fish dam and tore it down, pulling out all the stones so the water rushed over the free falls," Kaya continued. "He jumped up and down on the stones and shouted gleefully, 'Look, your fish dam is broken.' The girls saw that it was so. The youngest sister said, 'I told you he was Coyote.' Coyote said to them, 'You selfishly kept all the salmon behind your dam. But now the salmon will be able to swim downstream to spawn. People will be happy because they'll be able to catch the fish, and they'll thank me for giving them food.' And that's how Celia Falls came to be, and why salmon can swim up on all the rivers and streams now," Kaya finished. "Did Coyote really make those waterfalls?" Sparrow asked, pointing at the water rushing over the black stones. Because he was thinking about the story, he was no longer frightened. "You can see for yourself that the fish dam's not there anymore," Kaya said with a smile. "And who else but Coyote could have knocked it down so that salmon could swim upstream?" She scratched Tatlo behind his ears and gazed at the distant hills across the river. Would Two Hawks and his people soon be riding over the hills? Would she be strong no matter what news he brought of speaking rain? And what of her beloved horse? Would she discover Steps High as one of the many horse heroes of the falls? "Katsi yow yow for telling the story," Cayuse said. "Come on along now, we're ready to move on." After Kaya and the others greeted friends and relatives, the women set up their teepees and unlocked their goods. Then Ista gave Kaya permission to join the other girls, all of whom were like cousins to her. Some girls had gathered on a flat stretch of ground to play a stickball game called Shinny. They formed 2 teams and were chasing a rawhide ball, hitting it to each other with curved sticks. As Kaya walked up, several girls waved to her. "Play on our side, Kaya," Little Fawn called to her. "You're a fast runner." "Play on our side," Rabbit called. "Magpies fly fast." Magpie again. As Kaya picked up a shinny stick, she tried to shrug off the awful nickname she had gotten when she had neglected her brothers, and all the children had been switched because of her forgetfulness. And as soon as she was running down the field with the others, she forgot about everything except the next game. The girls batted the ball and pressed it against each other, trying to hit it between the two branches stuck in the ground at each end of the playing field. Some dogs, barking wildly, ran along with them. Little Fawn knocked the ball to Kaya, and she raced down the field to it, Tatlo right behind her heels. But when the other girls charged after Kaya, Tatlo caught in the middle of the action. Someone stepped on his paw, and with a yelp, he tumbled over the heels. Kaya stopped playing and let her pup to the sidelines. Rabbit was lying there, tying her moccasins more tightly. "Tot me wee, cousin," she greeted Kaya. "Tot me wee, have you been here at the river for long?" Kaya stroked Tatlo's ears as she caught her breath. "Not long," Rabbit said. "Only 2 sleeps." "I want to find 2 hawks," Kaya said. "Have you seen him?" "Raven went looking for him yesterday," Kaya said. "He told us that no Salish people have been here yet. They don't always make the long journey, you know." "I know," Kaya admitted. 2 hawks had given his promise, but his people might have had different plans. His heart sank when she thought of he might not be able to bring news of Speaking Randa at all. "Your pup runs fast," Rabbit said, holding out her hand for Tatlo to sniff. "But I think his rear legs run faster than his front legs." "Uh-huh," Kaya said. "I was going to tie him by our teepee so he wouldn't get trampled." "Come back quickly," Rabbit called after her. When Kaya approached her teepee, an elderly gray-haired woman Kaya didn't recognize was carrying her belongings inside. Brown Deer knelt by a traverse and tied more rolls of tool mats. She beckoned for Kaya to come close. "Cut Cheek's parents have sent one of his aunts to live with us for a while," she said in a low voice. "Crane Song's here to make sure I'm a strong worker and will make a good wife for Cut Cheek." She looked pleased, but she seemed nervous as well. "Everyone knows you're a strong worker," Kaya assured her sister, who was so dutiful and so good. Brown Deer shook her head. "A woman has to prove her worth," she said softly. "You'll be a fine wife for Cut Cheek. His aunt will see that right away," Kaya insisted. She tied one of the piece of cord around Tatlo's neck and the other end to one of the teepee stakes. Brown Deer frowned. "Tie Tatlo further away, will you? Sometimes he chews on the teepee coverings, and I won't have to look after him." Kaya led Tatlo to a stack of teepee poles and tied him there. He sat with his ears drooping, whining as if he were being punished. "Katsi yow yow, Kaya," Brown Deer said gratefully. She brought up the mats and hurried into the teepee where Crane Song waited for her. Kaya patted Tatlo on his rump. "Don't whine," she told him. "I'll be back for you soon." At the beginning of each new run of salmon, everyone honored and thanked the fish with a feast. Kayutsa and other women built big, slow-burning fires to roast the salmon. While the fish cooked under the sky, the women spread rows of tool mats down the center of a lodge large enough to seat all their family and friends. Kaya stood with the other girls and women across from the men and boys while her grandfather led them in prayer. "Hanya what made this earth," Pilaka said. "He made all things living on the earth, in the water and in the sky. He made Nimipu and all peoples. He created food for all his creatures. We respect and give thanks for his creations." All the people took a sip of water to purify their bodies before they accepted gifts from the Creator. After everyone had taken a sip of the cold water, each person took a tiny bit of salmon, giving thanks before beginning the rest of the meal. The men and boys served the roasted meat they provided, and the women and girls brought forward the foods they gathered. With the others, Kaya placed bowls filled with roots and berries on the mat. Then the women brought large wooden bowls of the cooked salmon into the lodge. Kaya watched Brown Deer move quickly and quietly among the mats. It was a great honor to feed the others, and Brown Deer kept her eyes downcast, even when she was offering Cut Cheek a bowl. But her face reddened slightly when he took it from her. Surely Crane Song will see what a fine woman Brown Deer is, Kaya thought, and soon Cut Cheek would prove his worth by fishing well and bravely with other men. If their parents approved, the couple would marry in the autumn. The thought made Kaya's heart glad, and also sad. She wanted Brown Deer to marry Cut Cheek, but she was also sad to think of her sister leaving her family. She had lost one sister when she had to leave Speaking Rain with the enemies. Now she felt she might be losing her other sister as well. And that's the end of that chapter.